to the Dream Journal. From the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz, the Dream Journal is a weekly show where we explore the power of nighttime dreams through conversations with dream experts and with you. In the words of Carl Jung, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Today's music is called Translation. Spiritual lesbian lawyer activist with Jewish roots. Our guest, Roberta Kurlioff, tells the story of how she grew up in an orphanage and built her home in the woods of Maine, creating a meaningful life even in the face of great loss. Her memoir is Framing a Life, Building the Space to Be Me. I am your host, Catherine Bell of Experiential Dreamwork, and welcome to the Dream Journal. The Dream Journal is also a weekly podcast. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and thank you so much for all your wonderful reviews. But most importantly, tell your friends. After all, the mission of the show is to get people talking about dreams, and one way to do that is to tell them about the podcast. Archives are also available at Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google and all those good places. You can also find the full archives at ksqd.org/the-dream-journal. Okay, so personal dream work. I've been on a bit of a dream drought. I've been kind of mulling over this long dream that you've heard about already about my dog, thinking my dog had died, but then he was there comforting me when so clearly he hadn't. And I had last night finally had a dream, and I'm like, oh God, I really wish I didn't have this dream. So maybe the dream drought is because I've been avoiding this dream, and it was just a tremendous amount of shame. Oh my God, shame is something that is such a sticky morass, so painful. And in it, a dear friend of mine doesn't want to be with me, and they won't tell me why. And they think I should know why, and I'm just like, what is wrong with me? Why does she not want to be with me? And it's so painful. Oy. So I got a dream, but not a wonderful dream of love and light, but more a dream of healing and wholeness, as they all are. I just don't know how yet. I'll have to process this one, and I'll work on it with my coach and mull it over. I'm sure there's some treasure here, but I don't know what. So Roberta S. Kurlioff is a speaker, community activist, former attorney, and the author of Framing a Life, Building the Space to Be Me. And this is by She Writes Press, which sounds like a very interesting press. And it just came out a month ago, July 2023. With humor and poignancy, her memoir takes readers along on an inspiring journey of self-discovery as Roberta finds that home is less a physical place than an intrinsic sense of self, an unshakable foundation of the heart and soul. And you can get in touch with Roberta at robertakurloff.com. That's Roberta, and then Kurloff is Kuriloff. robertakurloff.com, and she's got a lovely list of blogs. You can find her on Facebook at Roberta Kurlioff Author. She also has another book which she's written called Everything Special, Living Joy, which we'll talk a little bit about during the show. So welcome, Roberta.
Thank you.
All right. So good to have you on the show. Excellent.
Glad to be here.
Okay, good. Coming through loud and clear.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad.
Good. Okay, so you're calling from Maine, isn't that right? That's where you live now?
Yes, I live in Maine now for about 28 years.
28 years. But Roberta did not always live in Maine, and in her story, Framing a Life, she talks about growing up in an orphanage and how that happened. Her mother passed away when she was 6, and her father was still there, but he decided the best thing for them was to put her and her brother in an orphanage. I wonder if you'd like to tell us a little bit about that story, Roberta.
Yes, of course. Well, my mother died when I was 6 years old, and my brother was 2 years old. And he took us to live with my aunt and uncle in New Jersey on a farm. And we lived there for a year, and I loved that experience, and I share it in my book. But then my aunt also got cancer like my mother had, and I couldn't live there anymore, and none of the family members in my family were really able to take me. One aunt wanted to take me, but her place was in another state, and that was just too far from my father. So for some reason he decided that the best place would be to live in the orphanage until he could take me back when we were a little older. So that's how I got there.
Right, and you were there for 6, 7 years or something like that? It was.
Yes, I think it was 6 years, I believe.
Yeah. Yes. So and then before you were able to rejoin your father, and he would visit every weekend, and he just felt like that.
Yes, he was wonderful in that way. He came every weekend to Yonkers from Brooklyn, and took my brother and I out and spent the day together, a few hours together. But it was not easy, without question. It was a frightening adjustment originally, and my book in the beginning, I tell about that experience of going into the orphanage and him dropping us off with a counselor.
Right. And you talked about dreams that you have in the orphanage of being Superman or Superwoman and flying as and what was that like? How did those dreams help you?
I think they built me up. They made me. I had to survive some way, and there was something in me that knew I had to develop some beliefs. And one of them was that I was Superman's daughter, and I came to believe that everything in life had a purpose. It helped me survive my pain and sadness. My imagination carried me to being Superman's daughter, flying above my life, or also Roy Rogers' daughter, riding into the sunset or sunrise. The best was when my father took us out for the day, and later on weekends where we spent time with relatives.
Right, because there was a lot of brothers and sisters of your parents that just weren't able to take care of you in the way that your father wanted. But I want to get back to the dreams, because one of the lovely things about this book is that it is thick with dreams. That there's this richness, that this inner voyage that you go on, that you really explain throughout the book. And I love it that you don't go in and interpret the dream and say, oh, this XYZ, but you bring the dream in as a way of showing the feelings that you're going through, and it brings in, for me, a lot of compassion.
Thank you.
Yes. And one of the things that you said when we were chatting before is that dreams understand what we're going through. And I think that's so true, that there's something about dreams. They really know what's really happening for us on a really deep level often.
I agree with you thoroughly. I during that period of time in my life when I was really dreaming, there were so many different kinds of dreams, because it wasn't only about my childhood. It was about my growth, my being scared. And in one place in the book, I say my questions were puzzles. Would they ever fit together? I sensed that something more than just land was pulling me to Maine, something I wouldn't discover in New Haven, which was where I was living for, I think, 7 years. And And I wrote, was I a dreamer, like the little home kids? That's what we used to call ourselves, the home kids. The name we gave ourselves in the orphanage. And that's where I got into dreaming about flying and Superman. There was this tug to move deeper within, beyond risk, reminding me of all the extraordinary traveling dreams that I had. And a lot of the dreams that I share in the book are after the death of my partner, Nancy. A short-lived relationship, but one that just brought everything to the front, to the fore, that I had to deal with emotionally.
Right. Well, one of the things that I really loved about reading this was your description of the relationships along the way, and that, as you were saying, you moved to Connecticut, and you became a lawyer and an activist, and you discovered you were a lesbian at that point, and had your relationship with the woman Marianne I don't know if that's a real name or not, doesn't matter, but in the book you describe that.
It's a real name.
It is a real name, okay. And then the two of you looked into moving to Maine and building a house there, but you also split up around that time. And so you ended up building the house yourself. And I do mean building, like by picking up hammers and lifting boards and doing a lot of the work yourself. What was that like after being a city kid to come out to the woods of Maine and be construction after being a lawyer for so long?
It was quite scary and challenging. After Marianne and I had bought the property together, the plan to eventually move up here, but then our relationship ended. We are still friends, by the way, very close friends. And when I moved up here, I still decided I wanted to move up, even if by myself. That there was something that drew me here that I didn't understand at the time, but I think the connection between this land in Maine and the experience of living on the farm in New Jersey was very meaningful. And those connections of the land in New Jersey and the farm, and then my experience up here, just brought me back to a home base in some ways.
Okay.
And so when I moved up here, I didn't initially have a job, but I finally found a job as a lawyer at a program at the university, and I started building the house. I hired some women builders, and I helped work on it with them. Not as much as they did, but I did a decent amount. And it was a scary but enjoyable experience, but not one I would want to do again.
Maybe once a lifetime.
Right. It is a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
That's right.
For sure.
Right. And when you were in Maine, that's where you met Nancy, who you just referred to, who was a partner of yours for about a year until, I'm just going to go ahead and give spoilers, so we're going to do spoilers here. And that, because it's really integral to the book about loss, and that Nancy dies tragically after a very short time, like a year that you were together. And
in the car accident.
Oh my goodness, it's so painful. And it really, but the thing is, it sent you into this spiritual quest that lasted for 8 years, and that's when you got much deeper into your dreams and a lot of spiritual seeking. Like, what kinds of things what came up for you around this loss?
It was extremely painful.
Yeah.
It was surprising. What was so interesting is that, just to give you a sense of it, is that one day, I think it was about a week before Nancy died, we were driving home from a movie theater, and she was driving really quickly, and I screamed at her, "You're driving too quickly, it's dangerous." And it turned out, when she did die in a car accident in her car going to work one morning, the accident happened at the same spot that I had screamed at her about him driving too fast, and it turned out that spot was the house that was near that spot was I forgot the name of the. Wait a second. Was the person who eventually had to deal with her body.
No, like the Undertaker or something, Mortician.
Yeah. So, sorry about that.
Oh.
And it brings back a lot of memories.
I'm sure it must be difficult to talk about this. I know that was a really tragic loss. But one of the things about this loss is that there was a lot of interesting spiritual things that happened. I mean, of course, to you afterwards, but even before, I'm thinking of the dreams of your ex-boyfriend Ernie, who was a really early relationship for you, and he had some dreams that that were really seemed precognitive, or maybe are happening in the moment.
Right. He called me because we still kept in touch. I'm one of these people who doesn't go into anger after a broken relationship. I try to look at the bigger picture and the whole, and I'm more a positive person than a negative person. And so I kept in touch with Ernie, and he called me, and this was a month after Nancy's death. He called me and said, I finally had to call you. I woke up in a sweat, and I thought that you died in a car accident.
Oh. Wow.
And that was like a month after Nancy's death.
Oh. But he said the dream was like a month ago, so that was like right around the time of Nancy's death that he had the dream.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So and we still kept in touch over the years because we had this connection that was kind of special.
Right. Well, there's some kind of connection there, something on the spiritual level, it sounds like, and that he.
Yes, I think most of it is spiritual level. Right. So, I wonder if you want to tell a little bit about the story of writing your first book, of Everything Special, Living Joy, because it happened at a retreat center. I want to say a little bit. Why don't you say a little bit more about what that process was like for you? I would love to.
Yeah, great.
I went to the Insight Meditation Society retreat, and it was for a few days. And at the retreat, I was supposed to be silent. We don't talk to anybody. I had a roommate, but she wasn't in the room that much. And after a day or two, something was happening to me. I would be sitting in my room at night, and all these thoughts came just pouring out, and I didn't understand where they came from or what was going on, but I kept writing them, and that turned out to be Everything Special, Living Joy, the book that I published much later in my life because I was working at the time and I didn't have the time to really put it all together. So many years later, I published it, and it was such an amazing experience to feel like words are coming through you, and you don't know where they come from, and just writing them down. And that was Everything Special, Living Joy. And the reason I wanted to do the memoir was because I wanted to share that what happened at the retreat.
Okay, right. So something about you connecting to your spirituality by going to that retreat. It seemed like it opened you up to something to come through.
Without question. And then I kept writing more, just other things that I would do, and there's some things on my blog, on my website, that I think I addressed some of that. But it was such an amazing experience that I haven't yet experienced it again, and I hope that I will.
Right. Well, it sounds like writing the memoir is a rather different kind of writing experience. This is framing a life, building a space to be me, and so it sounds like this was not so much the channel where everything comes through all at once. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what it's like to write that book, the Framing a Life book?
It took me about 5 years to finish it, and I had to go through my journals. I've always been a journal keeper, and I have about 35 journals.
Wow.
And writing the book really centered me again, brought me back to my deeper self. It's very hard when one is working and busy and has a busy life to really try to center and be balanced. And I think writing my memoir helped in that respect to recenter myself. I mean, working as a lawyer, it takes energy and time, and you're delving into everybody else's life. And at some point, you have to look at your own as well. And that's what I was doing, I think, in writing the book. And I also wanted to share all the experiences that I went through. I think they're positive and really helpful. And for instance, in the book, if you don't mind me reading this, because this is sort of special to me.
Please, that'd be great.
It's in chapter 41. Because in my search, I was really looking at Judaism, which is my heritage, as well as other heritages. And I wrote, I meditated, asking for help from the Baal Shem Tov, a Jewish mystic rabbi, considered the founder of Hasidic Judaism, a sect originally formed in Ukraine, where my father was born. From reading, I admired his way of being, which included laughter and freely dancing as part of moving deeply into spirituality, even though at that time only men had permission to learn. Women, of course, were excluded. I visualized his energy and knowledge surrounding me, standing beside me as I spoke, feeding me a little of his wisdom. That night, I dreamt of 10 tall, large, bronze-skinned women, taller than humans, dancing in a circle high in the sky with me in the middle, my hands outstretched, swirling around and around. Their faces glistened with devotion and protective smiles, like a mother's smile. I awoke energized and ready to face my fear.
What an amazing dream there. 10 tall, bronzed women dancing around me.
Yes, and I still can picture them when I meditate at night. That is one of the pictures that I have in my head.
Right.
All the time.
That's a very empowering image, and most of the activism that you've gone through has to do with empowering women and finding safe places for women. And like you formed one of the, or maybe I think it was the first all-female law practice. Was that in New York? Or Connecticut?
No,
Probably Connecticut.
New Haven.
New Haven. Okay.
Yeah, in New Haven.
Right.
Yes. And then I helped start the first battered women's shelter in New Haven.
Yes.
And then when I moved to Maine, I got involved in doing that here as well.
Right. A very, very important work, and thank you so much for that work.
Well, it was so meaningful, and it helped me just as much as it helped the people I was helping.
Right. So we also have, you mentioned your father, and another piece, one of the themes of this book for me was the way the loss can lead to growth. And just certainly your mother at age 6, and then Marianne and lost the relationship, and then Nancy lost her life. And then there was another one of your father, that your father ends up living with you for the last several years of his life, which is an incredible offering to give to somebody to take care of them at that. And then his ultimate death is also, in the important part of the book, and your relationship with him. So this idea of loss.
I'd like to talk about that.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Because let me see when it was. When I turned 50, I met Bernice, my present partner.
Yep.
And she eventually moved in to my home, and we started building a home together. And then shortly after that, my father's situation in Brooklyn was very bad, and he couldn't live alone. And I talked it over with Bernice, and we agreed to take him in. And it was not easy, to say the least. We had 3 dogs, a bunch of cats, and now suddenly a father. And
a new relationship. You and Bernice were quite new.
In a new relationship.
Yes.
Right. My brother lives in New Jersey, and he wasn't able to handle this the way I could. So my father, being from Brooklyn and being very Jewish in his ways, coming to Maine, where is such a different type of life than he's ever lived. And then eventually he chose to die. He didn't want to live anymore. And Bernice and I had cared for him, and it was an extremely moving experience. I worked in hospice, and I talk about that in the book, and I knew how to handle things. But when it's your own parent, it really is quite different.
Absolutely.
And I would sit with him at the point where he decided to stop eating and then stop drinking. I would sit with him, and I'd write in my journal my feelings, because that helped me get through. And it was an amazing experience, even of changing his bed with the hospice nurse to care for him. That it was so emotionally meaningful, and it was hard, of course, because it took so much energy out of both of us. But Bernice was so wonderful in sharing this with me and taking it on, and when we've only been together about a year.
Wow, I love that.
He eventually died in my house, and friends came over. My brother came from New Jersey, and I think at least for that year, I felt better that he wasn't alone, living in an apartment that had roaches crawling on the walls.
Yes.
It was not very nice.
It's a bad situation, and you did the right thing, and it's not always easy to do the right thing.
Right, and I don't know if I consider it the right thing. It just seems to be what one needs to do or should do. I guess you could say the right thing, but it.
Well, I guess you're right. Maybe what was in your heart is a better way to say it, rather than what I should do.
Right,
but what was in your heart. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Well, we're talking today to Roberta Kurlioff about her amazing memoir, Framing a Life, Building the Space to Be Me. And we're going to come back we'll take callers in the next little bit. And we'll also talk a little bit more about what Roberta has been up to lately. Some of the new things in her life, some good, some not so good. And we will be back in just a moment. I want to let you know that we are broadcast live from the KSQD studios in Santa Cruz and co-broadcast live in San Jose by KCXU. Okay, welcome back to the Dream Journal. Next week, our guest will be Dr. Greg Marr, who will be talking about his amazing research showing that nightmare content shortly after trauma can predict long-term poor outcomes. It's the way PTSD starts somewhere, so he looks at people immediately after the trauma and shows that their dreams, even within the days and weeks after a trauma, can predict whether they will develop PTSD. So I am Catherine Bell, My guest is Roberta Kurlioff, and we are talking about her memoir, Framing a Life, Building the Space to Be Me, which is just has so many dreams throughout it and such a sense of meaning. So welcome back, Roberta.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I wanted to share with you a dream or two that I think is kind of fascinating. Is that
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Please.
Okay. One of them is one evening I had a particularly anguishing dream while taking a nap on the couch. I was on my knees in the kitchen crying, or more like wailing from the depths of my soul into eternity, like the piercing mourning cries of Middle Eastern women, hearing the echo, but nobody around me heard my anguish. In the dream, I intentionally didn't stop wailing as I needed to feel the pain and maybe connect to the why of so many losses. It was like being on a mountain, listening to my voice bellow into eternity or through eternity. When I woke, my mind was remarkably relaxed, sensing it was real, like I had experienced those cries more times than I ever could have fathomed. And I think that probably is something that happens to many of us, is in our dreams we might be experiencing things of past lives or potential, and that dream in particular said that to me.
Right, and
go
ahead.
No, another short one was another dream repeated a few times in different forms. I was driving without control of the wheel, not knowing where I was traveling and scared at first. Then I lifted my hands from the wheel and trusted, speaking out loud to myself that I didn't need physical control, that if I let go, I'd be okay, trusting the guidance I couldn't now see or even feel. In the dream, I lost my fear for a while, but then woke up in a sweat.
Oh, wow.
So dreams are so amazing. They teach us so much, and I recorded my dreams. I eventually stopped because I wasn't getting sleep. But
right.
There's so many experiences that we can learn from in our dreams.
Very true, very true. And what you were saying about the first dream, the wailing in the dream, that there's something about that. There's something about the healing that happens in the dream, and that, we think about all the different ways you can work with the dream once you're awake, and and yet I think a lot of the healing happens actually during the dream, which is good because most of the dreams any of us ever have will be not remembered. We mostly do not remember dreams, and many people never remember dreams, or extremely rarely. And yet there's something very valuable about that, and I think the healing does happen in dreams, and that we can deepen that healing by working with it in waking life, but we can also trust that the dream is bringing something. Even my horrible dream about shame, I don't know if you heard my dream at the top of the hour, there's something healing there, I'm sure. I just don't know what yet, but just trusting that's true. That's something. And another thing I wanted to bring up is lucidity. It seems like in both of those dreams you knew in some sense that you were dreaming, or you had some control in the moment at least. And want to say a little bit about lucidity for you?
That's a tough one. Let me think.
Is it fairly common for you to notice that you're in a dream, or at that point in time, yes. I think as time went on, I don't think I noticed it as much, but sometimes I still wake up and I do remember, and I do notice. But I think at that point in my life, the dreaming was a way to cope, a way to grow, and it was a spiritual challenge, a spiritual growth on a level that I haven't experienced before then or after. But I still dream with lots of dreams. I don't record them the way I used to because I don't get enough sleep then. Right.
But I used to record these all the time.
Right.
And
there's something about being in that moment of the wailing and deciding to wail longer, like to recognize that somehow this is helpful, that I think is beautiful, and it's a sign of your courageousness and your faith and spirituality. And then the faith really comes out in the second dream that you just shared, where you take your hands off the wheel. I mean, how many driving dreams do we all have? I have driving dreams
Right.
so often, and letting go of the wheel is not usually the thing I'm thinking about. It's more likely I'm trying to control it and the car's not responding, but you had this level of surrender or faith or trust or something that you knew that letting go of the wheel was going to be a good thing to do.
Yes, I think Nancy's death really opened me up to my spiritual side in a way probably I might not have done at that age, and it's a blessing in some ways. It was a blessing that she gave me, and even when I went to a psychic once after Nancy's death, she brought that out to me as well, and it turned out the psychic that I went to, I found out later, lived in the same town as Nancy had in New York State.
Oh, interesting. Well, that's like synchronicity.
Yes, I think there's so much synchronicity just everywhere. And in the same way that when it was after about 7-8 years of doing this search, suddenly I meet Bernice, and I knew that had a spiritual meaning as well. We were both on the same spiritual road and processing things, and I think it was really meant to be. And right before I met Bernice, I think I mentioned in the book that I could feel that Nancy was letting go. Yeah. It was time to let go and go forward. Right. And I just want to say to you that my memoir is not just my story, but I believe it's a story of women who have lived difficult lives, who struggle to survive. And I hope that readers believe that they are not alone in their life struggles, that they can find their inner core and trust, unafraid to tolerate or endure challenges and take chances in life. That home is less a physical place than an intrinsic sense of self.
Home is I'm going to stop out there for a second. Home is an intrinsic sense of self.
Sense of self.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that's so true, and to discover that. And I want to bring up a tender topic that you have been struggling with your own health recently. I wonder if you'd like to share a little bit about that with our listeners.
Yes, without question.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed a couple of months ago with ovarian cancer, stage 3, and I'm going through chemo now. And it doesn't scare me. It's another challenge in life. I'm tired physically, but I have the support of Bernice and family and friends, and I'm ready to face whatever happens in life. We're going to die eventually. Right. I hope I'm not going to die from this. I have good doctors and support.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to write and try to do more poetry and write on my blog. And I did announce it on my blog on my website because I hadn't written for a while. But I think my attitude is that of acceptance, but also challenging. Not acceptance and giving in, but acceptance with challenge. And it makes me want to live more fully, more completely, more consciously, and that's what I'm now trying to do. And I'm doing fine. I'm able to get out. I haven't had any really bad serious side effects yet. So we go out to eat. I wear my mask.
Right, because the immune system is very compromised right now.
Right.
Yes.
And I have wonderful people supporting me. So I just move forward. with a positive attitude.
Wow, that's
all I can do.
That's inspiring, Roberta. That's definitely inspiring, and I love that sense of moving forward and acceptance without so surrender or acceptance maybe is the word that you're using, but not giving in, but
not giving in.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you have support. You have support in your life because cancer has been throughout your life. Your mother.
My father died of cancer in my home. Well, he chose to die.
Right.
He didn't want to live any longer, but he did have cancer. And my mother died of cancer, and it runs in my family. And a number of my relatives died of cancer. But cancer is it's like everywhere.
Absolutely. And yet it's not the end of life. It's not the end of happiness. No. It's not the end of satisfaction and it's not the end of meaningfulness, I guess.
No, I have a wonderful spouse, Bernice, and I have a wonderful dog, Ruby, and I have wonderful friends, and I have this beautiful land that I live on, and every time I get up in the morning and look out at the trees and the sun, the woods, and the fields, I feel very centered.
What a blessing. It really sounds you have built a space to be you, that you really have found your way in the world.
Yeah, it took a lot to get here, but that is what life is about.
That's what life's about, yes, exactly. Well, as listeners know, I've been writing my own book. It's partly memoir. Sorry?
You mentioned that to me, yes.
I did. Yeah, because I'm wondering if you have any advice. I mean, I have part of it is memoir, but it's also about dreams and exploring dreams, but there is definitely some memoir aspects. And I wonder if you have any advice for me about writing. Maybe some of the listeners would be interested in some of this advice too.
I think I have always kept journals. As I mentioned, I had 35 journals. I'm on 35 right now, and I think writing in a journal every morning when you wake up is the way to start to get into writing and to get into your thoughts or things that happen to you during the day, to just go sit down and write the pain, the loss, the joy, and just start writing that way, and eventually it can turn into a book, which I think in many ways happened to me. And so I think really to sit with yourself, face your fears, cry, scream, smile, be with friends and family, but really open to the honesty. And that's the scary part. It is so scary to get down to the nitty-gritty, to face those things. For me, therapy for many years helped on and off. And I was always someone who looked within. And I think that's important, is to look within and to not be afraid to find what you hear inside.
Right. Wow.
And to meditate. And we all are searching. Life, we all know we're going to die. We're all searching to live a good life. Some people don't want to look at it that way and out of fear. But when you face the fear is when you get the joy, because you appreciate life.
Love that. When you face the fear is when you get the joy.
Right.
So, Roberta, I have Max here in the studio, and he'd like to ask a question.
Sure.
Okay, it's sort of open-ended, Roberta. It has to do with your position as an outsider in your own tradition of philosophical tradition. I don't know how to say it.
Judaism?
Judaism. Yeah. How do you think that the 10 tall women helped you adopt the Hasidic teachings, while the actual philosopher would have excluded you from it? Did they help you to learn the philosophies and actually...
Yes, I did not. I read and learned about not my Jewish tradition, but about the Hasidim tradition, the Baal Shem Tov tradition, And when I read about, I really had very ambivalent feelings about religion always, because, and I talk about that in the book, when I'm reading this story to this young boy, and it was so violent and religiously, I had to stop. I just couldn't accept that.
You're saying who was reading the story?
I was reading the story. Okay. It was a little book. I was babysitting this young boy.
I see.
And I had this book there that he had a story, and it was semi-religious, but it was so violent, and I didn't want to see religion, that it should be beautiful, to be so violent. And so I had to look at it differently. And so when I started exploring the history of the Baal Shem Tov, who was the leader of a movement where dance was possible, and you could relate. I'm trying to find the quote that I have in here about that. Can't see it at the moment there. But now I lost your question. I'm so sorry.
Oh, well, I think the idea was... go ahead, Max.
Yeah, the idea was, how does your position as an outsider in this whole thing affect your ability to adopt what you want to adopt and leave out what you want to leave out?
An outsider being like, because she's a woman and in the Jewish faith they don't allow women to practice? Is that what you mean? Yeah, okay.
Yes, yeah. I think in the beginning when I made discoveries, and I mentioned in the book, I was very annoyed that women could not sit downstairs in the traditional synagogue. They had to sit upstairs, separate from men, and they couldn't be rabbis. And in the book, I have a whole thing about talking to the rabbi in the orphanage and saying, I want to be a rabbi too. And he said, sorry, women cannot be rabbis. And that always stuck with me. And it came a point where I did not want to be a rabbi anyway.
Right.
But I related, I find such insight into the rabbinical studies and readings that I've done, and that made me relate to my Jewish spirituality and really to the history of what Jews went through in this world, and how they were treated. And so that I took more to heart, and I'm not really religious, but I consider myself spiritual.
Right. Sounds like it was very inspiring then for you to claim your own spirituality. And
yes, and that was after doing a lot of reading, not just Jewish reading, but other types of readings.
Great. Well, thank you for that question, Max.
I hope that answers your question, Max.
Yes, you've indeed answered it.
Thank you.
So, Roberta, I'm wondering where in the last few minutes of the show, if you want to say a little bit about what you're working on now, what you're heading toward, whether it's in writing or on the spiritual front, or like what's most exciting for you these days?
Well, I think for now I'm enjoying writing blogs for my website. I'm also looking to maybe do some short stories. I don't think I have another book in me at this point, but also I want to mention that in my book, at the end there are reader questions, so that readers, if they're in a group and they have a reading group, they could use those questions to help the discussion in a reading group.
Okay, so people can find this book on your website, but they can also find it on Amazon, right? Right,
it's on Amazon, Goodreads, and some others. And
yep.
And at the end of the book, there's readers' questions.
Okay, that's wonderful. Framing a Life, Building the Space to Be Me by Roberta Kurlioff, Kuriloff. And that's her webpage, robertakurlioff.com. And do you have any final thoughts for the listeners and encouragements that you'd like to give us?
Yes, this was a soul-searching experience And I think that is so meaningful if people can go deep and sit with themselves and search more deeply into what's important to them and what they can and cannot do, and try to get rid of all the demands that society puts on us that tries to control our life, and really just meditate and look deeply inside and see what's important to you, not what's important to the people you work with or the people or your friends or family, but do what is important to you and find that on a deeper level than just the superficial outside things that we do every day.
I love that. Thank you. Very inspiring. Thanks so much, Roberta. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I will wish you all health and happiness and many long years with your spouse and your dogs in the Maine woods. I'll think of you up there.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Thank you.
All right. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Okay. So, thank you for listening. The Dream Journal is produced at the studios of KSQD in Santa Cruz. We are live every Saturday at 10 a.m. Pacific at ksqd.org. The podcast is released on the Monday after the show. It keeps us growing when you subscribe, rate, and review. I'm Catherine Bell. Find out about my dream coaching practice at experientialdreamwork.com. You can email me at catherine@ksqd.org. That's KATHERINE at ksqd.org. You can follow Experiential Dreamwork on Facebook and Instagram to find out about upcoming shows. I'd like to thank Rick Cluffel, engineer and music creator, and Tony Rosimano for manning the phones. Max Deaton for in-studio questions, Eva Maladio for audio editing. The intro music is Water Over Stones. Outro music is Everything. Both are by Mood Science. Tomorrow morning when you wake up, take a minute to write down your dream and bring it to the next Dream Journal.